I lost 12 pounds and 12% body fat, but I had to stop dieting. Here's what I did. If you're in midlife and you're incredibly frustrated with the midsection of your body, you just cannot lose weight, you're putting on pounds in places you've never packed them on before, you've tried everything and you're super frustrated, you are at wit's end, this is the episode for you. I know it sounds counterintuitive to stop dieting, to stop trying to lose weight, and you're probably watching this video because what you want to do actually is lose weight. And I want to share with you my journey. I want to share with you strategies that I think might be the solution for many of you. If you're watching this video and you're a woman over 35 who you feel like you've tried everything, you've done all the diets, all the different workouts, you're eating less, you're moving more, you're doing all of these things, you're probably also feeling ashamed, embarrassed, annoyed, frustrated, depressed. Like, it's stressful. As a woman, it is incredibly stressful to start to go through, the midlife years, right? You're over 35, you're 40, 45, and like things just don't work the way they once did. And it can be really stressful to feel like you're losing control, like the things that used to work don't work now. And you are slowly putting on weight, and despite your best efforts, it's not coming off. I feel you, I get you. And I want to start by telling you that there is a solution. There is something that's going to work for you. And I'm going to share with you what has worked for me and what has worked for thousands and thousands of others. But I do think it requires changing some brainwashing that we've all likely experienced. And so I'm going to share with you the 5 biggest strategies I think made the difference for me. And they start with me really just deciding, okay, I'm done trying to lose weight. I was so over it. I was so stressed out and annoyed by the whole process. So as I entered perimenopause at about that same time, I stopped doing exercise workouts. I was someone who created fitness programs for health clubs and for consumers. And maybe you recognize me from late night TV. I've sold millions of exercise DVDs. And about the time that I decided to step away from doing consumer fitness videos, I was in the throes of perimenopause, but I didn't realize it. And so I want to say to any of you who are, maybe you're not in menopause yet, but you're over 35, if you're experiencing just a body that you're like, it's not doing the things it used to do for me. You're holding on to body fat in different areas. The things like what you used to be able to eat, you can't eat now. Like even having a glass of champagne or a glass of wine or a cocktail or whatever, it hits you differently. It just feels like you just can't bounce back from things the way you once did. You are likely in the beginning stages of perimenopause. And it's this period of 7 to 10 years before you hit menopause. And most of you just don't even realize that that's where you are and that this has so much to do with what you're experiencing. So I want you to know you are not crazy. You are not broken. It's not that you're doing something wrong. This is a natural process that can be mitigated. So as our estrogen starts to decline, which it does, it just does, after age 30. So at 35, you're already significantly feeling this decline, right? It's kind of a roller coaster ride. It messes with your insulin levels, which messes with your body's ability to burn through glucose. It messes with your cortisol. It messes with all of the other systems. So it is no wonder it feels like you're doing all the same things, but it's just not working. For myself personally, as I stepped away from these fitness videos, I was really stressed. And I had been conditioned to believe I had to be on a diet or I had to eat a certain way. I had to track my macros. I had to exercise to the point of exhaustion. And when I finally stepped away from that, I slowly started putting on pounds, not a lot. It was a couple of pounds each year. And at first I was like, oh, well, this, I'll just work out harder and I'll eat less. And no matter what I did, and the harder I did it, my face was getting rounder. I was carrying weight through my midsection. My arms and my skin looked different. And it became really stressful. I was stressed about it. I didn't talk about it because it's I didn't want to think about it so much. I didn't want to draw attention to it. And even though I was more comfortable with my body in some ways, in other ways, I was well, this is just, I guess, what happens when you're not exercising as much. But in the back of my mind, it was this nagging, gosh, it sure would be nice to be able to take off this weight. At a certain point, I started just getting much more disciplined. I'm like, well, the problem is I'm just not as disciplined. And you start to beat yourself up. You're like, maybe I'm not working out as intense as I think I am. Maybe I'm eating more than I think I am. It's just all these things, and I never associated it with hormones. Now, I do want to say this. At about age 46, I started with a little bit of hormone replacement therapy. And I started pretty early, pretty young by most people's standards, looking into hormone replacement. But I just didn't even think that I was in perimenopause. Doing hormone replacement therapies is what you need for optimal health. Look at the latest research. Please go back, and I will link to some of the most renowned experts, physicians who this is what they studied. This is their sole practice. They are up to date on the latest science, the latest research, and you will understand after watching some of those previous episodes, those previous experts, that a lot of what we used to believe about hormone replacement is just wrong. And if you want to live your optimal health and live with longevity and vitality, it's something you should consider. But it is not a miracle weight loss formula. It's not. It does level the playing field. So I was doing hormone replacement therapies, but I still couldn't take that weight off. So here's some of the things that I had to do differently, and I want to share them with you because I think this can help you too. Number one, stop dieting. Stop following someone else's meal plan. Stop believing that you don't know how to live unless you're on a diet. Stop restricting yourself. Stop believing that you don't get to eat dinner with your family or you don't get to go on vacation, that you need to be on some special diet. I completely stopped dieting, and that meant I stopped tracking my macros. For me, tracking my macros, it took all of the joy and calories. For some of you, it's calories, right? Dieting, tracking macros, tracking calories, all those things. If you've never done that before, hey, maybe that's what you need to do. But for some of us, it's what we need to stop doing, because we've been doing it forever. And it's stressful. And it just builds up this internal resentment. And for me, I'd even hired, here I was a health and fitness coach, someone who's, revered by hundreds of thousands of people. And I hired someone to keep me accountable so that I had to send them my macros every single day and my calories. Because I was like, this is the only way it's going to force me to do it. And that became even more stressful because try as I might, I very rarely could get in the amount of protein that I needed to. Now, there's something called the protein leverage hypothesis. And I think this may be the problem if you're someone who you're like, I track my macros, I track all my calories, all those things, and I'm still can't lose the weight. There is the protein leverage hypothesis is this theory, and I know it was true for me, that because you have your mind set in reaching a certain number of grams of protein per day, and you're obsessed with that number, because you want to hit that number, you end up overeating in ways you don't even realize. And that was certainly true for me. Number one. Number two, it was stressful. It turned eating and nutrition and things that should be joyful and things that should be intuitive, it turned it into a math equation. It turned it into a competition. It turned it into an assignment. It became a job, and it was stressful, and I hated it. So I absolutely stopped doing that. Like about a year and a half ago, maybe now it's been a year and a half ago. I said, I'm done. I just stopped. And here's what I did instead. I said, every meal, I'm just going to make sure it's loaded with protein. A healthy, lean piece of chicken, a healthy, lean piece of grass-fed, grass-finished beef, some form of fish that's healthy, that's lean protein. And I'm going to eat a big piece of protein, and I'm not going to worry about what it weighs, and I'm not going to worry about how many grams are in it. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to focus on my fiber and my greens. And I'm going to eat as many greens and as much fiber as I want to. And I'm going to limit my carbohydrates naturally. I'm not going to restrict them. Naturally, what happened is you're full. I mean, you can't eat a big piece of lean protein and a lot of green veggies or vegetables in general and then feel like having bread. You just don't. It's just not how it works. So it naturally reduced my glucose levels. And when your glucose levels start to come down, you become more sensitive to insulin. You become, once what the state that I was in, I'd become insulin resistant, and that spikes your cortisol. My cortisol was through the roof. And I know this because I tested. And there are lots of different signs that you can Google to understand if in fact your cortisol levels are high. But if you're chronically stressed, which I think weight and dieting and body image and all those things, and just like going through this transition in your life can be very, very stressful. So I would encourage you to try this approach because it will reduce your blood sugar, right? And that's going to help you to process insulin. It's going to make you more metabolically flexible. And metabolic flexibility it's really the key to fat loss without having to think about dieting. I want to take just a moment to say, if you're enjoying this content, if it speaks to you, if you're getting some value from it, I would love to ask you to do something that's free, but super valuable to me, and that is to just subscribe. If you could subscribe and then also like this video, it would mean the world to me. Oh, and if you haven't before, drop a comment below and introduce yourself. All right, back to the show. The second thing that I did is I changed up the way I exercise. Now, for me personally, I had done so many years of high intensity interval workouts, workouts that pounded my body, long workouts. Like I would run, I would do HIIT workouts, I would do boxing workouts. It really had to be super high intensity in order for my brain to believe I was actually getting a workout. And it needed to be long. And so I put myself in the state of chronic inflammation. And while for most people, exercise reduces inflammation, there's been some remarkable studies, and these are the studies that I read that really changed my view on what I needed to do for me. And I'm going to link to those below in my show notes. And again, for most people, doing a HIIT workout is going to reduce inflammation. But if you're someone who's been chronically doing high intensity workouts, you reach this adaptation in your body where your body it no longer reduces inflammation. In fact, it elevates your inflammation. And so the study that I'm talking about is one where they looked at rowers who are, they're like, I don't want to say professional athletes, but these are athletes. And if you're doing high intensity workouts all the time, if you're working out like an athlete, you're an athlete too. And these athletes, their cortisol levels, their markers were such that it appeared as though they had Cushing's disease. So cortisol super high, insulin resistance, weight loss resistance, the round face, all of those things from these are people who are doing high intensity workouts, long periods, like athletes. But there's a certain point at which it's just inflammatory to the body. And when you're holding on to that inflammation and cortisol spikes, you can't get rid of the body fat. And you just feel fluffy. And I read that study and I'm like, I'm training like an athlete, and I've been doing this for years chronically. I am chronically inflamed. I need to stop doing this. I know it feels counterintuitive, but I decided to just walk, and specifically to walk after meals. So like tonight after I have dinner, I'm going to go for a walk. Just walking and focusing on getting in more steps each day, not as exercise, but as being an active person, made a huge difference, and it reduced my stress. I was constantly, didn't realize this, and I loved my high intensity workouts. Don't get me wrong. I would get a high from them. I love them. But there was, as I'm looking back, an element of stress to it where I was always thinking to myself, like, what does a workout need to be today? And how many minutes? And do I have to do this? And do I have to do that? And how intense should it be? And did I go hard enough? And this pressure to always work out that hard created chronic stress. Just being active made such a huge difference. I was burning so many more calories without exercising. Just walking, pacing, not sitting. Like right now, I'm recording this podcast standing, and I'm going to burn almost double as many calories as I would just sitting. I'm just being a more active person. I recorded probably 1,000 podcast episodes sitting. I don't sit anymore unless I have to because the body wasn't meant to sit. So I started walking more. The third thing that I did, and I know you've heard this a million times, and that is reduced my stress. And I would hear that too. And I'm like, great, how am I supposed to do that? Please tell me, how do I change my life? Because our lives are just stressful. But I knew, especially after my doctor looked at my labs and my cortisol was so high And I'm like, I don't know what else to do to reduce my stress. My life is great. But I had to get serious about it. So number one, I knew, okay, this whole tracking of macros and the exercise, like all that stressful. I got to change that up. I got to just release it. So I made a decision to just release it. Like not try to lose weight, just release it. I also made a decision to look at the things that I actually have control over that cause me stress, right? And I had to do this on paper. So take out a pen and a piece of paper and you write down all the things that when you think of all the things and all the people who, when you think about them, it makes you stressed. And I went through that list and I realized probably 90% of it, I did have some control. There are certain people I didn't have to give them as much attention and do so much for them or worry so much about them. I could release that. I realized that there was some areas of my life where I needed more help, that I was putting too much pressure on myself. I realized there were a lot of things I was saying yes to because I thought I should, but I didn't really want to do them. And it stressed me out. So I had to make those decisions. And for me, and I'm going to encourage you to do this too, make this list on paper. Because if you just bounce around your head, it doesn't have the same weight and significance as writing those things down and then creating a plan to either eliminate or reduce those things that cause you a lot of stress. I stopped worrying about other people and I wrote down certain things where I'm like, I can't control that. I got to let go of it. And it made a huge difference. Obviously, reducing stress, it's like all the normal things you know already, like get more sleep, get outside, spend time with people who help you reduce your stress. Like that was one of the other things I did. There are things I got rid of and then certain things I do more of. And that is spending time with friends who don't stress me out, who are fun, who make me laugh. Like laughter is such a huge stress relief and letting go of certain things. But you know all the other, I don't even have to list all the other things that they're so common sense that you're supposed to do that help to reduce stress, like meditate, take a bath, pray, journaling. Okay, great. But sometimes all those things feel stressful too. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's so many things we're supposed to be doing. So I really do think you should take a look at your list. The fifth thing that I did is dropped the rules, especially as it related to food, diet, exercise. And when I say the rules, and so I don't know if you can relate to this, so I'm just sharing my own personal journey. For me, I surrounded myself with a lot of people who were also into food rules and exercise rules and the biohacking community and people who like all they want to talk about is all the different things you're supposed to be doing to be this optimal, perfect human. And it's like, who has time? Who has time to keep up with all these things? Who has time to make sure you follow all of these? Like, okay, I've got to have, warm lemon water in the morning and I need to do a cold plunge every day for 3 minutes. And then I have to go from there into an infrared sauna and from there into hyperbaric oxygen and make sure you don't eat until exactly 12:45 p.m. And then make sure you're wearing your blue blockers, like all of these things, like enough already. Instead, what I decided to do is just kind of like block a lot of that out, like stop consuming those podcasts that make me feel like there's more I'm supposed to be doing. Like I want to be informed, but I also need to apply the 80-20 rule. Like I want to enjoy my life. We all know that family member who like smokes cigarettes, eats bacon for every meal, goes to bed after half a bottle of tequila and they live to be 100, right? And then there's that person who's like the healthiest person you've ever met and there was like no toxins in their entire home and they're just like lived their life perfectly and then they get hit by a car or they get cancer and die. Like I think a lot of what I've realized in the last year and a half that helped me drop, 12 pounds is I got to relax. And for me, that stuff became stressful. Now, if that's not stressful to you, keep doing it. But I was becoming like, my brain had become like orthorexic where I was like worried about all these like perfect little things. And, oh no, is that toxic? And is this? So I had to drop the rules. And the biggest rule that I had to think about was intermittent fasting. So I really wanted to keep my glucose down. I wanted to control my hunger hormones. So I had to put my hunger hormones back in check to the point where like I'm not wanting to snack and eat all the time, because my cortisol was so high, because my insulin was out of whack, because my estrogen was dropping and my hormones were all over the place. It was really hard to control my hunger. And even though I didn't feel like I was overeating, in retrospect, when I look back, I was doing a lot of snacking. And sure, there were healthy snacks, but it was a lot of snacking. So now, because of all of these steps, again, it wasn't a plan to lose weight. It was a plan to just like free myself. And I started waking up and just saying to myself, I'm going to eat when I'm hungry, not when the clock says, okay, you have done intermittent fasting for exactly 16 hours. It's time to eat. Like, that's so dumb. That's a rule that I don't follow anymore. Now, if I want to eat late because that's when we're eating and that's when my friends are available, or we can get a dinner reservation, or I just want to have a good time, I eat late. When in the past I'd be like, oh, we can't do, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I can't go out to dinner that late. For me, that was just not in my best interest. Now, I don't snack much at all during the day. And it's not because I stop myself from snacking. I'm just not hungry. I wait until I'm hungry to eat. Most days, that means that I'm doing I'm not even going to say how many hours of fasting it is, but I finish at night. Sometimes I'll be eating as late as 9 or 10 o'clock. We go out to dinner. I will have French fries if I want French fries. I will have a glass of champagne if I want a glass of champagne. I don't restrict myself, but I always start with the proteins and the greens. And that way I'm much more full and satiated. And I'll eat as late as I want. And then I wake up the next morning and I really ask myself to wait until I'm hungry. And I would say 90% of the time, that means I'm working out fasted. I do heavy strength training 4 to 5 times a week. And I don't do any intense cardio at the moment. I may pick it up again at some point, because I do believe I've finally flushed the inflammation from my body. But at the moment, I love getting intensity through walking. I love the way it makes me feel. I love what it's done for my legs. I love what it's done for my body. I love the way it's brought me closer to my husband. I love getting outside. The vitamin D is so important for our immune system. But I had to relax all the rules around intermittent fasting. So now some days I eat my first meal at noon. Some days I eat my first meal at 2 p.m. Some days I eat my first meal at 9 a.m. because I wake up and I'm hungry and I listen to my body. I dropped the rules. In the past I'd woke up and I was hungry, I would force myself to wait until whatever the time was because I had that rule. Now my rule is, does this make sense? It has helped me to drop 12% body fat. It's helped me to drop 12 pounds. But more importantly, I feel like it's really freed me. And I was someone who believed, okay, this is just that change of life where, I'm a little thicker. I'm thicker around the middle. I look great and I'm strong, but I'm not going to weigh what I once did, or I'm not going to have the body I once did or that I wish I could have. And I was wrong, but I had to do things differently. I had to stop trying to lose the weight for me. I don't know if these strategies will work for you. There is no one specific way for everyone to lose weight. We are all so different. As I mentioned, some of the strategies that worked for me were because of my history, were because of what I had done to my body, the way I had beat myself up, the way I had restricted myself from certain food groups, the way I had placed so much stress on myself. So what's going to work for you, it could be something very different. But I will say this. Stress, insulin, cortisol, all of those things, they are at the fundamental root cause of weight loss resistance. If you cannot lose weight, you might not be stressed out for the same reasons I was, but I guarantee that it is cortisol and insulin and stress and the way your body is processing sugar and glucose. Those are the things that impact our hunger hormones. That's why when people get on a GLP-1, that's why they're seeing such significant improvements in their weight. And remember, a GLP-1, it's not like you're injecting it and it's removing body fat. It's like people are eating less and it's reducing inflammation. Check out the episode that I did recently with Dr. Tyna Moore if you're curious if maybe a GLP-1 might be an option for you. There's no judgment from this channel, from this podcast girl, from Chalene Johnson. We are all so different. And I think we have to be open-minded, and we have to work with people who really understand what's in our best interest long-term. Right. And so there's lots of different ways that people are using these GLP-1s. I would encourage you to check out that episode if it's something you're just even remotely interested in. I've done a bunch of different episodes on the GLP-1s, semaglutides, whether you call it Ozempic or Mounjaro or tirzepatide, like whatever the form is, they're all forms of these GLP-1s. And I've done quite a few episodes, and I think you'll see the progression that we know more now, and there's other ways of using them. But either way, I want you to have an open mind, and I don't want you to give up. I want you to know that it's possible. If what I've described for you, if you need someone to help you reduce your stress and figure out the right way to eat for you, and customize it. If you want to help in understanding how to lift heavy in this season of your life for women, if you want a program designed by someone who knows what they're talking about, and someone who's older than you, some of you, and who understands how to build muscle so that you've got the metabolism that you want and to change your shape at any freaking age, I would love to invite you to check out Phase It Up, or you can join my free walking program. I will link it below in our show notes, but it's myselfagain.com. It's like it'll help you restore your energy, reduce your stress, and get you walking more. Hey, thanks for being here. I love you. I mean it. And I'll talk to you soon.